This video was made possible thanks to CuriosityStream. Watch TLDR ad-free and get exclusive videos from us by signing up to CuriosityStream Nebula Bundle Deal at curiositystream.com/TLDR Global. When thinking about the Russia-Ukraine crisis, it's only natural to focus on the horrifying situation on the ground, the death, the destruction, and the demolition of community. Those things are obviously vitally important, but the impact extends outside of these population centers. The war is also taking a toll on farming in Russia and Ukraine, something that's crucial considering how much of the world's food actually comes from this region. Before we begin, only about a quarter of you are subscribed to the channel, so never miss a thing during this difficult time by subscribing and joining the TLDR gang. To understand this story, you'll need to understand that both Ukraine and Russia produce a whole lot of agricultural commodities. Russia and Ukraine have the 3rd and 10th most agricultural land respectively, and together they account for 12% of all exported calories globally. If you take a look at the staple crops that form the basis of most modern foodstuffs, you get a sense of how important Russia and Ukraine are for the global agricultural system. Together, Russia and Ukraine account for 31% of all barley exports, 26% of all wheat exports, 10% of all corn exports, 24% of rapeseed exports, and 32% of all sunflower seed exports. Obviously, the war has interrupted crop production in Ukraine, with agricultural facilities being damaged by bombing and many farmers either fleeing or joining the army. And as such, exporting crops has become more and more difficult. Early estimates suggest that this year's harvest will be down by about 30%, and if the war continues, Ukrainians will be unable to plant new crops in the spring, which will mean an even smaller harvest next year. Russia's agricultural exports have also suffered. While Russian agriculture isn't technically sanctioned, banks have been reluctant to lend money to Russian businesses generally, which has also limited their export capacity. Russian farmers have also struggled to get their hands on necessary imports like agricultural technology and fertilizer, both because of sanctions, but also because the ruble is pretty weak at the moment, which has made imports significantly more expensive. While Russia obviously won't be as badly affected as Ukraine, a lower than average harvest is still expected. And a lower than average harvest in both Ukraine and Russia will directly affect countries in Northwest Africa and Central Asia, some of which rely on Russia and Ukraine for as much as 50% of their imported calories. Egypt, the largest wheat importer in the world, imports about 80% of its wheat from Russia and Ukraine, and there are reports that the price of bread has already increased by 50% within the country. So you get the idea. The direct consequence of war is a reduced harvest in both Russia and Ukraine, which accounts for a significant amount of the world's agricultural exports. But what does this mean for the wider global food markets? Well, obviously, it means higher prices for those things that Ukraine and Russia usually export. Just look at the prices of the crops we mentioned earlier. Wheat futures have jumped 50% since Russia's invasion, maize is up by 15%, and rapeseed by 70%. But the war won't just affect crops produced in Ukraine and Russia. These higher crop prices also mean higher animal feed prices and therefore higher meat prices. But perhaps most importantly, sanctions on Belarus and Russia will push up the price of potash and therefore the price of fertilizer. Most countries, even big agricultural exporters, don't produce their own fertilizer and instead rely on the global market for supply. A massive 80% of all produced potash is exported to another country. And before the war, the price of fertilizer was already pretty high. In the UK, for example, prices had essentially doubled. And this was in part because of ammonia, another key ingredient in fertilizer, which is made by using natural gas. And natural gas prices have also been pretty high recently. This is one of the scary consequences of an interconnected economic system. High prices in one place can push up prices across the board. According to reports, fertilizer prices are now at about £1,000 per tonne, which is about triple what they were a year ago. And this will affect food prices everywhere. Look at Brazil, for example. Brazil is a massive player in global agriculture. It's the largest exporter of coffee, soybeans, pork, chicken, and beef anywhere in the world. But Brazil imports most of its fertilizer and relies on Belarus and Russia for about 50% of its potash. As sanctions and self-imposed restrictions hinder Russian and Belarusian exports, the price of these staple Brazilian exports will increase dramatically. So you get the point. The war will push up food prices across the board, and if this wasn't bad enough, it's made worse by the fact that food prices were already at historic highs. In January, before the war, the UN's Food Price Index estimated that prices were about 8% higher than they were in 2021, and 38% higher than 2020. These price hikes have pushed up global food insecurity, which jumped during the pandemic. The latest data from mid-February estimates that global food prices are now 4% higher than they were just a month before, and 43% higher than 2020. And provisional data from The Economist suggests that wheat prices have already jumped another 30% since the war started. As a consequence, food stocks are now running worryingly low, at 31% below the 5-year average. Low food stocks and a 43% jump in food prices in less than 2 years is pretty terrifying, especially if you don't live in a developed country. So you get where we're going with this. The war in Ukraine is pushing already high global food prices even higher. But what are the political implications of that? Well, for starters, everyone's going to be paying more money for their food. The amount the average person in the developed world spends on food will jump from about 5% of their income to nearer 10%. But these increases will be far starker in the developing world. In sub-Saharan Africa, for example, food spend as a percentage of income is predicted to jump from 20% in 2017 to 34% in 2023. And in the Middle East, it's expected to go from about 10% to nearer 20%. In turn, this will probably mean more food protectionism, which is basically when countries limit their food exports to guarantee their domestic populations have enough. By our count, 6 countries have already put limits on food exports, and that number will probably rise. Globally, this is only going to make the problem worse too, and prices will likely be forced even higher. And these price jumps will probably have significant political ramifications. In the Middle East and Africa, food prices often precede political unrest. For instance, in 1977, Egypt's president attempted to scrap the country's bread subsidy, a move that ended up triggering riots that had to be quelled by the army. Ethiopia's revolution in 1974 followed an oil price shock, which pushed up prices. And higher food prices in 2008 preceded the Arab Spring and led to the toppling of Omar al-Bashir in Sudan in 2019. And interestingly, riot police are already on the streets of Morocco's capital. Ultimately then, higher food prices are a humanitarian catastrophe and will probably lead to political unrest in the developing world, something which no one wants to see. But it's an issue which will be very difficult to resolve and correct for. And if that's not enough TLDR for you, then you should head over to Nebula. You might have heard of them before, but my creator friends and I have teamed up to build our own platform where we don't need to worry about demonetization or the algorithm. Over there you can find all of our latest videos ad-free, and we've also got a bunch of content available exclusively on Nebula, which will never come to YouTube. It's not just us either. All of our favourite educational creators are already there, like Wendover Productions, Real Life Law, Polymatter, Legal Eagle, Half as Interesting, and many others. But wait, we said this video was brought to you by CuriosityStream, right? Well, as a platform full of the best documentaries online, they naturally love educational creators like us. As such, we worked out a deal whereby if you sign up to CuriosityStream using the link in the description, you'll also get free access to Nebula. And that's not a free trial either. You'll get access as long as you remember. To make things even better, for a limited time, they're offering a deal where you can get 26% off their already low price, making an entire year of both services less than $15. Less than $15 a year for all of your favorite educational creators, as well as superb documentaries on CuriosityStream. Signing up at curiositystream.com/TLDR Global or clicking the link below not only gets you the deal, but also directly supports TLDR and educational content on the platform more generally, as well as getting you original content and an ad-free experience.